Hi everyone, this is Yogesh back with another podcast. This time we have Rehan, aka Rehan Shafi, or you can also say Schartz Rehan, which is the most preferred professional name, perhaps.
I mean,
Just please go ahead.
Rehan would do actually. It's
Yeah,
okay. Not big
okay,
with names. Rehan would do.
sure. Just to give a quick brief about Rehan. Rehan is right now director of technology at ALLPS. He has worked on tech side extensively. He has worked with multiple companies, including in Rygbee. Now they have renamed the company, I believe, and
Yeah, they're calling it Rackster nowadays. Rackster.io.
right, and few more. And also the funny part about me and Rehan is that we are from the same college. So culturally, we are kind of inclined to say, and because Rehan is much more senior than me, he passed out in 2016. We're inclined to say Rehan Bose as a cultural thing in our college. So I'll stick to it, and I'll only refer as Rehan Bose because that feels more normal to me. But yeah, that's all about Rehan. Few more things. He really likes to play games. He's too much into tech, kind of sort of nerd if he Rehan boss won't really mind me saying that way. And yeah, that's all. Anything you want to add, Rehan boss, from your side about you, which I haven't covered, but you still want people to know? Over to you.
I mean, that's a lot of introduction, man, and you truly have made me blush. Even I could not put myself, you could say, in this way whenever someone asks me, please tell us something about yourself. And I get that line a lot, actually. Even I cannot describe myself the way you described. I'll try to remember this thing and I'll repeat this next time when someone asks.
Definitely. If it really feels like that is the value that I have added in, for sure.
Sure.
Starting with the talk, and my first question to you is, how are you doing right now? And I would like to know if you're working on an interesting project, personal or something, which you are kind of, happy and fine to share with. Maybe I'll start with that part. How do you?
Okay. Yogesh, I've been rather lucky in this area in a very weird way, actually.
Okay.
From the very starting time, I have had interest in rather arcane and obscure things.
Okay.
Definitely, programming is not one of those. Choosing programming as a career in 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, and such times in India, like it is as vanilla as it gets. So it might come off as a you know kind of not quite aligned with the thing when I say this thing that I have a lot of interest in very arcane and obscure things. Anyway, so continuing this line of thought, I at this point of time I am in my company interest due to me having interest in arcane and obscure
Hmm.
uh, with my regular work, which basically was run of the mill software engineering, back and front end cloud, this, that, nothing interesting there. With this thing, I was actually into intelligent machine systems before machine learning was a thing.
Okay.
So machine learning actually became a thing at around late 2013 when some guy named Alex, I believe his last name was Petrov or Gorbachev. I don't remember. The guy was an Eastern European person, probably of Russian descent. So there
Hmm.
used to be a competition held every year in which people used to come from every corner of the world and they used to compete in designing a piece of software which would be good at face recognition. We do have a lot of software which can
Right.
do really good facial recognition even without AI. So we're talking about 2013, 2012 in those areas. Now here's a very important thing. So this guy Alex, he won the competition at in 2013. I mean, it could have been 2012 as well because I remember reading this in blogs. Anyway, around 2012, 2013, this guy wins the competition out there. And the software which he wrote for winning this competition was very, very interesting. That software, actually, you could say, was the first large scale implementation of neural networks to win any competition out there in a very serious sense. Now, you will be surprised to know that the theory of neural networks has been around since late 1960s, actually, in academia.
Hmm.
And one of the downside of this theory back in the day was the practical applicability, because, of course, we did not have that level of compute. So a lot of
Right.
work was going on into this area, but not definitely not at this pace, the way we are seeing it as of now. Anyway, so I have been interested in neural networks since very, very early days. In fact, in our college, one of the projects which I made in summer with the help of my professor out there was actually a facial recognition in C++ using OpenGL and facial data, some geometric structures out there. There are some other algorithms we were butting our heads onto that. Anyway, but everything changed when this guy Alex, he demonstrated that you could use neural network, kind of forgotten piece of software architecture out there, and you can solve real world problems. It, 2014, it became kind of mainstream. Rest is history. Now, since I
Okay.
had interest in this thing, I had a very strong, you could say, foundation because of this thing since 2014. Now, this is, we are talking about even before my graduation. And when I continued to work in my company, once things settled down, like finances got good and you have job security and all of those things, I started to look into this thing. So I have had long experience with it. All of that thing came into very handy when at certain point of time, I was actually able to do something really good with the document with information extraction from documents. So
Mm-hmm.
looking at it from this perspective, I believe now you can understand that we are working with an AI system as of now, which again is working in the area of documents information extraction. And very obviously at this point of time, we are using large language models, LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
LLMs are all the rage at this point of time in machine learning. I mean, diffusion models and large language models, they are all the rage at this point of time. And for a very good reason. So I've been working on this thing, and that's why this actually becomes very interesting, very exciting for me. Not for all of the usual reasons, but because of that, I would say childlike joy that I told you so, this would be good.
Yeah, understandable.
So I would say like that is perhaps the most interesting thing which I'm working, which I really like to do. And
Mhm.
again, comparing back to the similar thing, I also have interest in a completely different area, or you should say I had interest in a completely different area that has evolved as is now, and that is noise. Really.
Okay. What
So
about
it's a
noise?
yeah. Generally speaking, noise is noise. I mean, yeah, calm environment is better, noisy environment is bad. And noise, generally, when we want to say in technology, when we say anything is noise, essentially it means unstructured data, or you could say random, lots and lots of randomization, a lot of chaos, a lot of entropy. Your picture could be noisy, your sound could be noisy,
Okay.
and of course, audio noise definitely is there. Now, what's interesting about noise is that it doesn't have any pattern whatsoever. That's what
True.
constitutes noise. If you have any definable pattern, you would be able to identify it and it is not noise anymore. There is a great saying about this thing as well, signal versus noise. You might have heard about that, particularly if somebody remembers information theory, Cloud Shannon. He gave the he's the guy, because of him we have Hamming codes, and because of him we have parity bits and all of those things. The guy was really big into information theory, so the
Mhm.
concept comes from there. So now noise actually has a lot of uses in pattern generation. You, if for that matter, if this thing comes as a surprise, you might have seen when wind blows and trees, their leaves are going to start out there. Now in real life, in real physical world, this motion is completely governed by Newtonian laws. It is an example of Brownian motion, where the laws which are governing the motion are fairly simple, but the output is incomprehensibly random and chaotic.
Right.
Okay, here's a very good question. How would you make realistic grass wave, or a realistic, I would say, lava bubbles, or a realistic bubbles in water, or let's say a realistic tree moving in any kind of animation? Hint, hint. The answer is noise.
Okay.
So there
So
are
how
computer
exactly?
algorithms.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, so there are computer algorithms which allow you to simulate very realistic, I would say, randomization, making examples, making uses of something called noise. One of the fundamental thing happens to be out there is called Perlin noise. So it's a very simple equation actually out there.
Mhm.
What Perlin noise is going to do, it's going to give you random numbers between, let's say, certain limits. Generally, we take it between 0 and 1. And then you do that, and you can use that. Let's say if you have a very simple thing where you are going to position the where you are going to calculate the tip of a particular leaf which you want to animate out there. So you can animate it by hand, or you could run a function on every tick. This function is going to give you a random number within a certain range, and that is the position of your leaf out there.
Okay.
Let's say you want to make a realistic looking lava surface. There's a lot of stuff going on. There are a lot of layers. Sometimes there are particles, sometimes there are bubbles, and all of those things. How would you decide where should a particle go, where should a bubble go, where should a layer go? Answer: generate some noise. Based on the value of that noise, you drive this whole system. Another
Okay.
example, when you have to model terrain data like surface data.
Hmm.
This is something which is very useful from a space exploration to, I would say, video game development. How would you simulate, let's say, the realistic roughed rugged surface of a particular site where maybe your moon rover has to go on out there, or maybe your video game floor should look pretty much like, yeah, it's a dirt road actually with a lot of imperfections out there. Again, generate some noise and take the output of that float value which is coming out of your noise algorithm, multiply that by some another value, and that is your height difference from, you could say, the relative mean plane. For some
Okay.
points the height is going to be negative, so they will go a little bit deep. For some points it would be positive,
Awesome.
they would be a little bit up, and you have a realistic looking terrain out there. Now, Perlin noise is one example, then you have Fresnel noise, then you have Voronoi noise, and there's a bunch of things out there. I have had a lot of interest into this thing. This actually led me to one side, yeah, okay, fine, so how do you make cool shit with it? Well, you actually pick up any kind of graphics thing, maybe OpenGL or 3JS or whatever, and you go to
Okay.
town with it. So yeah, I really like doing that thing as well. I'll send you some examples like of really interesting terrain generated out there using
Definitely.
just noise. Using just noise.
Sure, sure. I would really love to see that. That kind of brings me this question because I had this question. I don't know, back in past 2 years back or 3 years back. I'm not sure exactly when, but there was this aspect or prospect that was mentioned to me that when you are trying to generate anything random, let's say a random number or anything random via the random algorithms,
Mm-hmm.
although they are random, but they
Mm-hmm.
still follow some pattern. They are not actual, completely random sort of the entropy stuff. So,
Yes.
do you think it is true, or how exactly this happens, or is there any pattern, or is it there are certain algorithms which has a pattern? Most of the algorithms, let's say, have a pattern, but there are few algorithms which don't follow any pattern. If it is.
There are certain algorithms actually which do not repeat themselves at all. Okay,
Mhm.
talking about whether or not is there a pattern. So you could say, what do we mean by pattern? Generally speaking, when we talk about strict definition, if you go into that area, then generally pattern means it needs to have some kind of repeating structure associated with it. Then
Right.
you would be able to identify some kind of pattern. And this is how I would say our cognitive visual algorithm inside the brain works. If it
Hmm.
repeats, we can identify a pattern only if it
True.
repeats. However, I'm going to give you an example where things do not repeat at all, and there's a lot of pattern out there. If you look into the visual aspect of written language, it generally, the shapes within, let's say, one particular word, they generally do not repeat quite a lot. However, when you broaden your scope and you take into account all 26 alphabets of English or all 52 alphabets of Hindi, then you are actually identify the patterns. So the idea
Okay.
is how much you are willing to zoom out or zoom in. Now,
Hmm.
keeping this context in mind, when you come back to it, are there any algorithms which are not going to generate any kind of patterns? Yes, there are, depending on your range. On an
Okay.
absolute scale, there is no such algorithm.
Okay.
Now, there are algorithms where you could have a system where nothing ever repeats. There are algorithms. I'm forgetting the name of this thing. This YouTube channel, Veritasium, made a really great video about it. It's this comes into triangle generation and coloring those triangles in certain manner out there. You will never be having anything repeated ever. Math guarantees this thing. But
Okay.
but there is a big but. What is the pattern behind that? The pattern behind that algorithm outputting these triangles is that the orientation of triangles will continue to change,
Okay.
will continue to repeat, actually. So
Okay.
we are kind of close out there. However, for all practical purposes, every single algorithm, they do start repeating at certain point of time.
Okay. So, Justin, a different question.
Mhm.
We all know about pi, right? Pi is something which is told that it won't repeat. It's an irrational number, right?
Right.
You can just keep on writing it, and we won't be able to find a place wherein those fractional digits again repeat itself.
Absolutely.
So, do you think, because we had a discussion about the context part, do you think
Mhm.
there is an very remote possibility, or maybe impossible possibility, but a remote possibility wherein it actually repeats itself? Just in, even though there's no right answer to it, at least not something which is provable. But what is your opinion on that?
I believe it will never repeat. Trust me when I say that, and I have very good reason to believe that.
Okay, if you can, brief explain the
Sure.
reason, you
The
can
reason
understand.
pi will never repeat itself, in my humble opinion, is because if you look into, if you peer the veil a little bit back, what exactly is pi? Well, pi is the ratio between the diameter and circumference of a
True.
circle out there,
Hmm.
more or less, like give or take. This is what pi is. Everything else, your most sophisticated algorithm to calculate pi, 22 by 7, all of these things, they are our approximations.
Right. That's true.
So
Okay.
from this regard, you could look at pi and you could certainly make an argument that pi happens to be one of the fundamental constants of the universe, pretty much like the speed of light or the constant of gravitation or the constant of magnetism out there. And this is something which altogether, when they stick together, these things, they more or less describe our reality. Now,
True.
why I believe, for a good reason, that pi will never repeat itself is because is because our measurement system, when we say that this is an irrational number, we defined or designed a particular system of measuring stuff with numbers out there. And then we tried to model the, I would say, laws of reality based on our understanding of that thing. It's a very human centric approach of looking into things. There's nothing
True.
wrong with it because at the end of the day, trees are not going to understand nature. Humans are trying to do that. So things have to be human centric. And
Right.
I have this belief that our model, at its very fundamental basis, is not perfect.
Okay.
In fact, there's this Polish mathematician Gödel. He actually proved it that the number system which we use, the most elementary thing, the counting thing, like 1, 2, 3, 4, blah blah blah, this is imperfect.
Hmm.
It does not represent, and it cannot possibly represent all possible states
Hmm.
of any
Okay.
given system at any point of time. I would encourage you to read something called Gödel's incompleteness theorem. It's mind blowing stuff. It systematically goes down and it proves at a very fundamental level, yeah, all of your math is wrong.
Hmm. Okay.
So,
Excited to read about
my,
it. Really go with you.
yeah,
Please go ahead. Yeah.
the idea is that our systems of making sense of these, I would say, laws of nature, they are imperfect. And it is my opinion because I am not an atheist person. I used to be in my rebellious years. Over the period of time, I got wiser and I came to realize, yeah, there has to be a creator. There is God. And again, like you could say this thing pretty much like a foolhardiness, because in modern times, particularly in kind of quote unquote educated circles, if you say that you are a believer in God, not a very good thing to say out there in
Mhm.
certain circles out there, where I tend to hang out anyway. But here, I mean, I'm very comfortable with this fact. So I believe God does not deal in imperfections. Whatever
Mhm.
systems have been put in place, at least the laws of physics. Let's not make it social argument. That
Mhm.
sucks because humans are involved way too much in sociology. So whatever God's systems are there actually for, I would say, the known reality or even the unknown reality, I tend to believe that they are perfect. And when we see this quote unquote irrationality in our numbers, it is
Mhm.
the artifact of the fact that we are not using, I would say, a proper system. Now, it doesn't mean that we are not trying. We as humans, we are trying, but this is the
Def-
best we could come up with.
right. No, that makes sense a lot. So just trying to bring up my thoughts in the way I use. I had this question asked to myself that
Mm-hmm.
maths that we say maths and the calculations that we do,
Mm-hmm.
um, or whatever we are studying, either it being physics, biology,
Mm-hmm.
um, are they really the way, or are they really universal or the way they should be? Because ultimately everything that we have done so far, even the history this.
I mean, we have very good evidence about it, Yogesh, that for a very, very large degree, like more than 99%, yes, they do reflect reality. They might
Mhm,
not reflect reality perfectly, but they do. They might
mhm,
be wrong in terms of precision, in terms of exactness, but in terms of the overall direction, in terms of the explainability of phenomena, they are correct. This is a
mhm.
great achievement of human species, we as a species, that we are able to model the reality and to certain degree predict it.
Right, and I agree with the point. But the point that I wanted to bring forward was, have you by any chance saw the movie the biography of Ramanujan? I don't know the exact movie name, but
I have seen that, and I have known that. I also know his story, and I also know that the guy claimed Devi ma sapne mein aayi thi, and I mean the a deity came in his dream, and
right,
then
right.
she told him to write things out
Everything
there.
says. Yeah.
Right.
So in the last part of the movie, when um, the professor who brought him Ramanujan to the college, he
Mhm.
was defending him in his work, saying that we as mathematicians, what we do is we try to figure out the patterns which are there in the world. We haven't created
Mhm.
them. They exist from the first place. What we are trying to do is we are trying to understand those patterns, and based on this, whatever calculations that we have done and all, whatever we
Mhm.
have done is to prove that whatever we have seen is what how and is what how it is and how it is supposed to be.
Mhm.
And that is just one part of reflection, which is what we have done so far on
Mhm.
academics, on any field perhaps, is what
Mhm.
we have observed so far. Okay,
Mhm.
definitely because it works, there is a ground to it, a truth to it. But let's say when I ask this question to myself, let's say we let's say encounter somewhere down the line 50 years, 70 years ahead, and we find some other intelligent species in the some other known place, and then
Mhm.
they come up with their academic compilations, and we come up with our academic compilations. What is the
Mhm.
guarantee that they will be the same? I really feel that won't be the case. Again, I'm not saying what they'll bring is possibly 100% accurate, but the point is this: whatever we have been able to achieve so far in academic perspective,
Mhm.
from all the subjects, from the all the subjects perspective,
Mhm.
it is all based on our observation, and we based on the observation place certain notations and whatever comes forward, and then build our base there, and then we started doing the experimentations and build everything. Same will
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
their case. So the point is
Mhm.
this, that there is maybe perhaps there's maybe there's a possibility that what we are doing fundamentally at a place is
Mhm.
flawed in itself, but since we are not able to capture that flow because, well, everything works the way we are supposed to be, at least the world that we're able to observe, it just works for us, and we are not able to figure it out. Maybe in long term we will be able to figure out that small anomaly, but maybe
Mhm.
in short term, the observations that we have done so far, the world that we have seen so far, since it works, it
Mhm.
works. Similar to what happens, let's say, when you have an atom, so as to say.
Mhm.
Initially, there were multiple models of atoms which were given, and there was this theory that was hypothesized that atom is probably the indestructible substance. But then we realized that
Mhm.
we have proton, electron, neutron, and then we also realized that we have even furthermore,
We have
small.
quarks and antiparticles and a whole gluons
Right.
and a whole bunch of particle zoos out there, basically.
String theory is also true, and we might realize that everything is energy, and and that's just formation of
Mhm.
stuffs, and we might be able to figure that thing all out.
Mhm.
But coming to the main point that I had is that whatever we have discovered so far,
Mhm.
it is based on our, you can say, a hypothesis, and the fact that it works for us as long as we have been able to see things. But
Mhm.
that cannot guarantee that whatever we have done so far is always and completely accurate. Best example is the Newtonian physics, right? It is not really
Mm-hmm.
something which is applicable to the um, total space, especially when, let's say, when you reach speed of light.
Right.
Those calculations should be, should be applicable, like s is equal to ut plus half at square. But
Mm-hmm.
these calculations just don't really work because we haven't really considered the other dimensions and the timing part and energy part. Then
Mm-hmm.
Einstein relativity comes in, and it says although what we have, the algorithms that we have still works, at least in our
Mm-hmm.
frame of reference. But if you, look it from other prospective scenarios and case studies, you might be able to find that they don't really work out. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe there are some elements that we are still missing, which we might further in long term figure out. And
Mm-hmm.
that is just a part of it. Because the second part of it here is, let's say, if we have animals coming to our planet and we do and cross to cross, study of the academics that we have compiled and they have compiled, it might be very
Mm-hmm.
much possible that we will see a lot of distinction. The way, let's say, the academic for, let's say, in past times, Europe's and India's has been, or America's and Russia's has been, the way we have, or Greece, like for instance. So that's what I sort of, maybe that is what I right now currently believe. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what do you think about this? Do you have any, different opinion? Do you think it's not completely true, or something that you feel I'm missing, or anything like that? But what is your opinion on this, the whole aspect that I mentioned?
I'll start with a very simple statement. Satyam shashvatam bhavati. Let's start from there. Satya
Sure.
shashvat hota hai.
Hmm.
It is incorrigible, incorruptible. It is what it is. It
Right.
doesn't matter if we are measuring it, or an alien is measuring it, or
Right.
someone else is measuring it. Whoever it is, even let's say tomorrow a dog gets sentience and intelligence, and dogs start doing this thing. So even in that case, satyam shashvatam bhavati. Truth is
Right. Agree.
incorrigible. It is out there. Now,
True.
coming back to the thing, to your question. Let's say, consider, I mean, this is actually a very lovely case. So let's say you have advanced aliens, and these people happen to have a very good knowledge of science. First, when we talk about academia, I would actually disregard anything and everything which is not pure science.
Okay. Sure.
There is not even a point actually discussing in that.
Sure.
Histories, philosophy, sociology, that is beyond point. We are talking about fundamentalities of nature in here.
Yeah. Let's stick to it.
Okay, so let's stick to pure sciences, not even STEM, not even engineering and medical, just the pure sciences, pure
Mhm.
physics, pure maths. Chemistry happens to be more or less an extension of pure physics, actually, which is
Right.
more or less specialized in certain domains out there. So let's talk about pure physics and pure math in this area.
Right.
Now, the thing is that what is the chance that they are going to have different academic theories regarding phenomenon of nature, and we are going to have different academic theories out there? Well, there's a very good chance actually that this could happen. You yourself, I mean, you made a very fine point when you said that at certain point of time Newtonian mechanics was the ruler of all textbooks, all of the academia, and then at certain point of time we came to realize that Newtonian physics does not work when you go to relativistic speeds. It breaks down when you go to relativistic differences, like anything which has relativity involved in it. Newtonian physics
Right.
starts to break down. And if you want to draw a hard line, I would like to add it there. That happens to be around close to 1% of light of speed.
Mhm.
As long as you are at you are, let's say, reasonably less than let's say 10% of 1% of light speed, let's say. So that becomes 0.001% of light speed. Up until that point of time, Newtonian physics works wonders. Very accurate, predicts everything in a really, really good manner. When you go beyond that thing, up until 3 to 5% of speed, light of speed, up until those fractional, you could say, relativistic velocities, Newtonian physics actually starts to give you, it keeps giving you really good results actually, with certain degree of margin of error.
Mhm.
Because under these circumstances, the question becomes of precision. Because the first limit which I told you, 10% of 1% of light speed out there, up until those lights, the margin of error is actually so small, it does not even matter for any practical purpose. If you're doing it for practical purpose, but if you're doing it as a thought experiment, yes, then it matters. Because x tends to 0 does not mean x equals to 0.
True.
So for the pure sciences, it matters. That's why I picked this thing. So, okay, coming back to this thing. Yes, it is entirely possible that some of our theories are wrong. It is also entirely possible. Most and okay, all of our theories are wrong. Let's say
Hmm.
if we get somebody
In
out there who
certain
are
ways.
way more in, I would say there is a possibility of this thing, that our fundamental understanding of universe, which originates from the quantum world, that is entirely wrong.
Hmm.
I'm
Okay.
not saying it is wrong. I'm saying, yeah, it is. It is definitely not something which is which is improbable. Yes, it is
Hmm.
possible, and I personally am very open to this idea. And here's the thing: a lot of scientific community is also pretty open to this idea. And here comes a very important thing. There are certain things that when you might say, okay, then their academics and our academics. So the idea is that when you talk about their academics and our academics, this should not be confused with their truth and our truth. Because at the end of the day, the laws which govern the universe, they are unchanging. They are not different for them. It
Right.
is
That's true.
definitely possible that they have better understanding of these laws, and
Hmm.
we do not have that good of an understanding. That's why our working theories are not that good. And this actually happens to be the beauty as well as the fundamental advantage which you could say the scientific method. I believe you are aware of this concept, the scientific method. This
Right.
is the
Yeah.
fundamental advantage of the scientific method, that in case of conflicting evidence, you must update your belief system. This is one of the core tenets of the way science is done,
Right.
or at least it is supposed to be done out there. And in my opinion, this is something which I would say differentiates the scientific thinking from religious dogma.
Hmm.
Because the very basis of scientific thinking, or the scientific method, or the principles of science, is that you might be wrong on long enough time scales. It is almost guaranteed you will be wrong. Hence, in the light of new information, you must update your belief system. On the other hand, the religion is dogmatic, it is unchanging. I mean,
Hmm.
why is the case that since we as a species we started or we became, let's say, more open to this idea that we might be wrong, all of our, I would say, scientific advancements stemmed from there, that yes, you might be wrong. Because if you
True.
look into religious dogma, any religion whatsoever, religion has all the answers already. For that matter, pick any
Yeah.
religion, they have all the answers already, whatever you can think of. And I mean, religion has its place definitely, but when it comes to finding the or understanding the laws of the universe, unfortunately, it does not have a very good place out there. Now, when I said that I believe in existence of all creator God out there, I did not mean that I believe in the dogma of religion.
Hmm.
I do have an inkling that yes, some deity, something, someone, somebody perfect, I would say, or maybe far more advanced than what we are. There is a creator behind this thing. I believe so, with a firm belief. But my concept of that creator is not associated with any particular religion out there. Now,
Okay.
skipping this tangent, coming to the main point, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. There is definitely, I would say, it is almost a certainty that at least some of our theories are fundamentally wrong at this point of time. And owing to the scientific method, that you must update your belief system in the light of conflicting information at any point of time. Our scientific theories, some of them will always be wrong, even with those aliens.
Hmm.
I'm going to go out on a limb and make this statement. Maybe in certain areas they have a lot to learn from us, and not just we are to learn from
True.
others.
True. Right. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So, going on ahead with the other questions that we have, because we have been having a lot of discussion here on science and stuff, we can just get carried away, and that's a good
I
thing
mean,
in a way. But
I would actually recommend something like to your readers, to your listeners, particularly,
please,
and you as
please,
well. A book by Carl Sagan, Dragons of Eden.
okay. And readers, you
I
can
will not
find
say anything about this book. Nothing. I really want you to read it.
Sure, and they will get the link for the book in the description for sure.
Right.
Yeah, moving on ahead with that discussion that we had. So you were mentioning about the ML stuff, and then you mentioned about the noise stuff. Coming to the noise stuff, and we'll definitely come to the ML stuff because we kind of have a kind of strong similarity, and in a way, I also have expertise up to some extent, so we can definitely have a good conversation there. But coming to the noise stuff before going there, right now, I'm pretty sure. Right now, there are multiple projects that are happening in noise, and you mentioned that you are very much right now, fascinated about the noise as well. Is there anything specific that you're working on this area, or something that is being built right now, or was researched right now, which you are, interested in and looking forward to?
I mean, I'm not personally myself into any kind of research in there. I find these things really, really interesting.
Okay.
It's like pure interest. So I read a lot about them, and I actually implement them in certain manners. I think I can share my screen here, right?
I think so.
Would that be a, would that be a part of recording if I share my
That
screen?
should be. I haven't tried it, but let us try it out. I don't see any issue or harm in trying it out. Yeah.
This is, you could say, a representation in black and white of the flow of water channel in here. So if the whiter a particular pixel is, the more water is going to flow down there. So from the top right, this is going to start flowing in here. And if you really zoom into the thing, like somewhere around this place
Mm-hmm.
here, you can see, you can kind of make out the ridges and the peaks of a hill-like formation in here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now this has been generated by overlapping couple noises and then applying certain, you could say, scaling factors to those noises in here.
Okay.
And from there we have erosion pattern. Now you can also generate, now this image has been derived from this image actually. So the
Okay.
idea is you take the output of this particular noise pattern, you
Mm-hmm.
take a particular noise pattern and you multiply it by you scale it by certain scaling factors in there, and from there you apply a second function. You could do something like, okay, here I have certain sharpness going on, so how about this? I'm going to take certain pixels out there. Let's say I
Mm-hmm.
take 16 pixels in the vicinity of each pixel, and then I'm going to replace those pixels with the average value,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much like what we used to do in convolutional neural networks, something similar to that. And then you have another algorithm which is actually telling you which pixels to, diffuse in this particular manner.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if a pixel has pure white or pure black, don't diffuse it. But if
Right.
a pixel has certain threshold in gray area, diffuse it. And the outcome of that thing will be something like this,
Okay.
more or less. And when you combine these two or three things in here in one or the other sense, this is what you end up with. I mean, of course, definitely once you, I would say, color it up actually.
Okay.
Let me open up the software which does it for me. It's called Kaya.
Okay.
Don't you guys have recent? Yeah, these guys have recent. So this is what it looks like. This is I'll show you what we have done at certain point of time in here. Different values of different things in there. I'll
Sure.
let you know. But first, let's take a look into the final version. This is our terrain, and this has been generated by applying a bunch of noises on top of one another.
Okay.
It's pretty detailed. And the river channel which I showed you, it starts from here. And all of those are different flow channels which I showed you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go here. So pay attention to this area. I believe you will be able to correlate where this particular area is in the image. It's the second ridge which is coming from here. So this is the course, this is the first ridge, this is the second ridge. So
Right.
this is that ridge channel in here. So the water is going to flow from here to here. And all
Okay.
of these things, like every single one of these things, you're able to see that. Now, let's take a look how this thing is made, more or less.
Please.
Okay, so you start with the output of a particular random noise. So this is one, and this is two.
Okay.
You can clearly identify this thing. There's some random pixel value which we have generated, and then we are cutting it by applying certain step patterns in there. You have a plane going on at this place, you have a plane going on at this place, and on these places as well. You're just merely cutting it. You take two of these
Right.
guys, you combine them, this is what you get.
Okay.
Then whatever the output you have out there, you run it through what we call step function. In mathematics, I believe in 11 12 we
Yeah.
have discontinuous functions example. You run it through step and you end up with this. Now there are certain parameters with the step function, but the basic idea is noise A with some planes, noise B with some planes, combine them.
Okay.
After that, you run it through step function. Run it through step function one more time. And at that point of time, about that erosion thingy which I told you. So here
Right.
I told you in terms of pixels. In 3D, we are going to that, and we are going to do that thing in terms of, let's say, height values.
Right.
You do
Okay.
some diffusion, you end up with this. Just by doing some diffusion and doing it multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
you end up
Okay.
with this.
Okay. So you kind of in the last phase fed the noise that you generated earlier, the river stream, to
Right?
this, and it has those, depths and elevations, and it then created those streaming patterns that we
Right.
are right now able to see. Right. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
From
Interesting.
there, you apply some, okay, from here. So at this point of time, a modeling work is done. You have a
Right.
realistic looking terrain. Now let's apply some colors. So in this case, we are isolating all of the things which are sheer cliff sizes. By sheer cliff sizes, I mean almost vertical things. So those are highlighted in white in here, as you can see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And here we have all of the things which are not sheer vertical cliff sizes, but you do not have anything perfectly flat, so everything is gray. But you can see things which are more white, those are the places you could say which are more horizontal than vertical. In other words, you could say that this is the place where sand would stay,
Right.
and here on the white portion sand would not stay.
Got it.
Then this software actually provides us some satellite data, so you can put it out there on different rings. So for the sandy part we use this color, and pay attention to these areas. For the
Mhm.
rocky part we use a separate color because I'm trying to make it out of sandstone.
Okay.
You see the difference between, there is a subtle difference.
There is, yeah.
Okay, or maybe I should I don't know. Yeah, I believe you would be able to see it much better now. Pay attention here. All soil. And
Mm-hmm.
now onto the rocky faces, I apply some different color to kind of highlight that this is sandstone. Everybody knows sandstone right here, right?
Right.
And we do the similar thing for the soil.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a soil color. We leave everything else, and then we combine these two. We combine it some more in here. We combine the output of this thing, and finally we do a color fix. Color fix essentially means you brighten it up and you end up with this thing. So all of these things, it started from from noise. I really like noise.
Right, definitely. So you mentioned about the LXNet, and initially before LXNet, neural networks were not really thought of much. They were, like you mentioned, introduced in past, but they were not used because people felt it won't really do the purpose, and it might not really make the machines intelligent, so as to say. Some people even doubt this is a real depiction of the neural networks that we have in our brain, which is still an
I mean, they absolutely are not the real depiction of the way neurons work in our brains. They are not. People are right.
right. There's people, some people who believe yes, there are people who believe no, there are people who say not at all. Personally speaking, personally, if I kind of have to provide my opinion, I don't know much yet, so I won't really comment as such, but I'm happy to know what is your basis to Definitely, it won't be a real depiction of neural networks, which really makes sense. But still, let's say if you have to bring up a light on this specific topic, is it or is it not, or is it there? Is it there? It is it is up to some extent. It is in depiction, but after which it fails. And what is your opinion on this?
I mean, it
Because
is, you could say, the only, I would say, I mean, there are surface level similarities in there. First off, yes, the way human, or not even human, any neuron, like
mm-hmm,
neural nervous system of kingdom Animalia, from
mm-hmm,
starting from very tiny multicellular organisms, from like
mm-hmm,
starting from Hydra to up until blue whales and humans, it functions essentially on the same principle. You have certain chemical reactions going on. Your neuron pretty much is a cell like all other cells. And what it does is it fires activations. All right. What is an activation in and out of itself? So here's the thing. Your neurons have capacity to interact with certain chemicals, certain inorganic chemicals, actually. All of them happen to be salts, actually, with
mm-hmm,
certain chemicals in very interesting ways. One of the interesting ways our neurons can interact, I'd say, with the inorganic salts is that depending upon the concentration of any particular kind of ion, be it positive ion or be it negative ion, upon detecting a certain threshold or concentration of these kind of ions out there, our neurons can actually start some kind of chemical response on the other end. Like neurons are generally elongated, so, and they have activators and sensor like mechanisms on both of the ends, not in middle. This is very important to understand. That's what makes neurons special out there.
okay, mm-hmm,
So let's say on one end you have dendrites, and those dendrites are sensitive to, let's say, certain concentration of sodium ions out there, Na
mm-hmm,
plus. Although they work with potassium, like a whole bunch of S block elements, our neurons make use of, and they actually work with a whole bunch of S block elements, positive and negative ions, both
mm-hmm,
halides and S block elements. Anyway, so after receiving a certain concentration of a certain ion up until to a certain point of time, the neuron starts to to create something else on the other end of it. And when it receives something on the other end, then it starts to do that on the opposite end of this thing. So from here, the concept of weights and biases and activations comes along. So the neural activation or the neuron activation, this term originally comes from biology, actually, from
right,
the neural biology, from the cell biology. And we
mm-hmm,
started to use the same term because you definitely can write some function out there which could, in a very approximately crude manner, mimic this functionality out
right,
there.
mm-hmm,
Now, so what are the similarities between artificial neural networks and our neurons, or let's say
artificial.
biological?
Okay, sorry, yeah, yeah,
What are the
biology,
similarities? A, both of them have some kind of an activation function. We
right,
don't know what is the exact activation function for biological neurons, but we do know there is some kind of function because it activates during certain temperature, during certain, let's say, ion concentrations. It activates after that ion concentration is sustained for a particular amount of time, and then the output is also pretty much fixed about these different inputs out there. So we know this thing, there is function. All right, let's code our simple function. We'll take an input, we'll do something with it, will give an output, and it will give a certain value or value up until a certain limit only when the input is something like this. Nice. Thumbs up.
right,
You modeled it. The second similarity, which is between biological neurons and artificial neural network, ANN neurons out there, is that they have the ability to connect with each other. Now, if you want to write a computer system which is able to connect, yeah, just make one function call another function. And in reality, the way we actually implement neural networks, when you really open up the C++ code of TensorFlow or PyTorch, you'll come to realize it's a directed graph, basically. You're
right,
traversing a graph, and then you are taking whatever the output was from the previous step, and you are feeding that as an input to whatever the output is on your next step out there. More or less, it's a directed graph.
right,
Cool. And finally, we know that after showing things repeatedly and adjusting your activation function individually for every neuron, biological neurons can actually predict, detect, actuate, sense anything abstract thought in case of humans, very abstract thoughts, and nominally abstract thoughts in case of other mammals. So
Okay.
we followed the same principle out there, and the similarities aren't there. One of a very important things, which is pretty much, you could say, straightforward for biological neurons to do, which is impossible with artificial neural networks, is neuroplasticity.
Okay.
Mouthful. It's a pretty big word out there. Now, here's the thing: what is neuroplasticity? When somebody meets a severe accident, particularly in the spine, there's a very good chance that unfortunately that person might end up paralyzed to a certain
Right.
degree. And
Mm-hmm.
then there is other kind of paralysis as well, when somebody, let's say somebody's hand is in a very bad accident, no damage to spine, but their neural nerves have been severed, then that person's hand has been paralyzed pretty much, done and
Right.
dusted for. What happens when in a severe injury somebody loses a portion of brain matter?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot can happen. A person can lose the ability to speech, a person can lose the ability of vision, a person can lose the ability of hearing. It is very unpredictable because different people's minds have work in a very different manner. However, here's a very important thing: brain has an intrinsic ability. It has been seen time and time again in patients where certain physical portion of brain actually was damaged or removed or lost. The person lost the ability of speaking, or the ability of, dexterity with their fingers, with his or her fingers. Over the period of certain time, when they were retrained into those things, they were able to gain these abilities one more time, aka some of the neurons in the head were able to pick up the tasks of the neurons which do not exist anymore.
Right.
Neurons are multi-purpose. And you might have heard about some people, particularly like overhyped hippie people, actually. They were started shouting when LLMs came up. Yeah, AGI is there. It is sentient.
Right.
It knows it is sentient. So this actually came from there. These people started to argue that, okay, LLMs are the networks where they are doing general purpose things like, hey, look at them. We never trained them for writing poems, but they can write poems. We never trained them for doing analysis or summarization, but they are doing analysis, summarization. Now this is hogwash. Let me be very honest about this thing. There
Mm-hmm.
are, yeah, we have problem of explainability in AI, but this shit has been explained pretty nicely.
Mm-hmm.
So, why? Okay, claim one: artificial neural networks work like neurons in brain. No. Why? Because we don't even know how neurons in brain work.
True.
So yeah, there is that. They mimic the behavior in a manner that you could have, pair of tongues, chimta. You could say the pair of tongues mimic the behavior of fingers. Yeah, in a sense it behaves, but does it function like fingers? No, it doesn't.
True.
It's that kind of analogy: fingers versus tongues. So
Mm-hmm.
ANNs, LLMs, diffusion models, they are tongues. Biological neurons are fingers.
Got it. Understandable. And I think, like you mentioned yourself, there is a lot that we don't know about neurons and how our brain works. So, to say
And they
exactly,
say that we know more about space and less about our oceans. Man, we know even less about how our brain functions, actually.
that is true. And even you can say we know very less about our body in general as well. I don't know when, somewhere back in 2014 or 16, I don't know exactly when, a
Mhm.
research came which mentioned that we have a new organ in the body that we have been
Yeah,
even.
I read about that as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
I read that. I'm like,
So,
fine, you cut up so many humans, so many autopsies. You never noticed that? Genius.
right. So there are lots of unknowns in even to how we work as such. We do know few of the macroscopic things which really impacts us in maybe majority of scale, but we still don't know many things that maybe are very much crucial, especially when it comes to our brain. um,
Mhm.
there has been few interesting attempts. If I don't know if you know about this part, is that there are some people and maybe even some researchers as well. Even
Mhm.
there was a research paper that came ahead. What they are trying to do is they are trying to link your physical neurons, brain's
Mm-hmm.
physical neurons,
Mm-hmm.
um, um, animals maybe, in animals perhaps, to
Mm-hmm.
the actual chips which are regulated by electricity. And the
Mr.
intention is,
Elon, you're talking about Neuralink.
right. In a way, but still there has been researches where let's say you have a neuron, actual biological
Mm-hmm.
neuron, and you have the chips, and electronic chips. When I say chips, it is electronic chips, and you train the neuron to, let's say, fly a aeroplane. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and it will, by trial and error, see and make mistakes, and eventually it will be able to figure out how to fly a plane. Not an
Mm-hmm.
realistic, but just an experimental stuff.
A
I guess that
simulation.
research, yeah, there was a research that came onto this, and a few attempts have been made, I believe. But the
Mm-hmm.
understanding here is this, that let's say if you even use your you know your actual biological neuron, you will be able to figure out the patterns to do certain tasks, and
Mm-hmm.
that can happen. So yeah, I don't know if
I
it's
mean,
if
as long as you are sourcing those neurons in an ethical manner, I have no problem. But if you are doing stem cell harvesting in humans to do that, for example, I will be the part of Butlerian jihad against this kind of abomination. Seriously.
uh, those neurons for fortunately not from humans, I guess.
They must
It was
not be from humans. That's fucking abhorrent.
yeah, and you also require other nutritions to provide to neurons, the biological neurons. But yeah, there are aspects wherein I'm sort of concerned with the cyborg behavior of the way world is moving. But maybe it's just me, not being able to
Have you played that game, Deus Ex Human Revolution? There are two factions on that. So the idea of that game is that okay, you will live in a future where biomechanical and bio cyber implants are commonplace. I mean, that game was cyberpunk way before cyberpunk happened, actually.
okay.
So, and the backstory of that game is that there is a civil war among humans, and the
Mm-hmm.
war is being fought between organics and augmenteds. So
Okay.
augmenteds are the humans who have embraced this technology. Yeah, if I've lost my hand, so what? I can have the hand replaced out there, or maybe some other organ replaced, or maybe I could replace my eyes to have enhanced vision and things like that. And then there is a group of people who is vehemently opposed to this kind of behaviors because they have their own principles. They believe in the mortality of humans, and they believe that mortality and knowing the fact that eventually you are going to die is something which keeps us humans. So according to these people, the other group happens to be inhumans, and
Mm-hmm.
they are the two warring factions in the game. Now in the game, this is an immersive sim, so the game does not tell you these are the baddies, these are the goodies. You can join any faction. And my
Mm-hmm.
God, that game has actually given you some really compelling reasons to be on their side as well as to hate the other side. I cannot do that good of a job, actually. You have to play that game, by the way.
Okay.
So, about this thing, and every time I play that game, apart from one playthrough, I'm pretty much on the organic side. Back
Mm-hmm.
augmentations. That's my take.
Right. Um, Understandable. I'll give it a try for sure. But still,
And if you
given
cannot give a try to this game, there's a movie called Gattaca.
that will be
Watch it.
far more easier. Sure. Sure. But yeah, I am still, going on with my thoughts. What I really mean to say is I don't really know if the way of cyborg is the way that I really I want the world to pursue, or the world to go ahead. But ultimately, you in a system of things, when moving ahead, you don't have so much of that much of a say. It moves on certain reasons, principles, and the individual person don't have that much really of an you know levers to pull off to do certain things.
Mhm.
But
Correct.
either way, it's still in far off thing. Maybe we won't be able to see our generation won't really see all these stuffs.
Mhm.
And I believe for some reasons I'm not really much optimist about Neuralink.
Neural.
But again, that's just my opinion, and it's just stays with me. But yeah,
I mean,
the
I know on internet there are morons who like, yeah, I mean, my company has put a chip on my hand to monitor my work progress, and I love it because, and wait for it, I do not have to update any Excel sheets. I was
Mhm.
like, why are you even alive? Why don't you die?
I don't know. So just because you brought this point, two things that I kind of wanted to bring up. The other way I see things here is that I really like the way we are made or evolved as such from biology, and I would really much like to stay the way I am. So that's
Mhm.
one argument that I can put forward, and I would really love to stay the way that I am. That is my personal choice, whatever happens. Second argument that can also be placed here is this, that for a person who can no longer walk or speak or see certain things,
Mhm.
being able to do those things via an electronic device in a way
Mhm.
is giving someone chance to survive in the world, and that is something which is not really bad,
These are
at
good
least.
intentions, certainly.
Yeah. So I, with all these things, I am still not sure where my thoughts are going, to be very honest. But what I have right now in my overall understanding and perspectives and whatever you want to say is
Mhm.
that there is a silver line to when you might have to choose to be on that side, the cyborg side, or wherein you have some sort of implantation of electronic stuffs,
Mhm.
in you, and when not to. Again, that's just my definition of things, and I still don't have a
Mhm.
clarity there, I'll be very honest. um, but I don't have answers to everything, but that is how I see things right now. But yeah, so for that reason I can't even blow the idea in general and say it's completely waste why people is pursuing those stuffs. But yeah, that's me. um,
People are
you want
going
to
to
say?
pursue anything and everything. See, anything which is conceivable. There are two you might have heard about in at least programming circles. Anything and everything eventually will be written in JavaScript. You might have heard about this phrase. When
Right.
people were working on bloody Node OS, my God, that abomination.
Right.
Anyway, I mean, that merely is an extension of this thing that whatever is conceivable, whatever is doable, eventually people will do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, people will do it. And there's no point in stopping these people or banning such things. I mean, these things will come up. And eventually, I see, Yogesh, like the question is not whether or not you should support augmentation or you should oppose augmentation. That is not the question. I believe the question is do we have required wisdom in us as a species to be able to do something with this kind of technology? Now, before this kind of technology comes up, we will never have that kind of wisdom. I'll give you a very nice example in there. Yeah, I mean, it's very popular nowadays. Everybody has seen Oppenheimer. Today, I am become God, God of death, bringer of death, whatever that pussy side. I don't like that guy in particular. I am on the American president's side. That bitch didn't push the button. I gave the order. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
just mark me in that camp. I'm not in Oppenheimer's camp. I'm in the Truman's camp, actually.
Okay.
So coming back to the thing, up until to the point when humans did not possess such a power that they could actually realistically wipe everybody off the face of Earth, we did not need that kind of wisdom, and the result of that thing was frequent war, World War One and Two, and all of those things
Right.
continuously. Once we possess that kind of power, and Oppenheimer, being a pussy as he was, he just went into depression and he was like, yeah, I mean, I did this thing. No, you didn't do anything. However, what happened at the end of the day? Nuclear war never happened because over the period of time, we as a species, we stumbled, we made mistakes here and there, but eventually we got that wisdom. We inculcated that wisdom.
Right.
And so it is my understanding, yes, there are questions, particularly about this area. I mean, there are any kind of technology which is, I would say, powerful enough is virtually indistinguishable from magic. And when you have magic at your hands, well, the first thing you need is wisdom.
Right.
And you will get wisdom only after burning that magic. You first
Mm-hmm.
wield the fire, you don't have wisdom how to wield it. Then you get burnt, and then you get wisdom. So we will go through the tempering process similar to that. I just believe that we go to that tempering process to a lesser degree because when the guns first came out, man, there was blood out there. but
Right.
then guns, then tanks, then rockets, then airplanes, and eventually, by the time we came with nuclear power, all we needed to gain that wisdom was bomb two cities, who were Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So
Right.
hopefully, going forward, when we have more capable technologies at our hands, we gain that wisdom without burning two cities, and let's just hope for that.
That is true. And the way I see it, as it is about experimentation. When you experiment on certain things, you kind of calibrate yourself to understand the you know goods and bads of it, and advantages and cons, pros and cons of it. I
Mm-hmm.
have an extension to it, and that is one thing that I feel. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely agree that as in society and as in civilization, we are going ahead. We are not going backward as such. We are learning, taking feedbacks in every aspect and angle,
Mm-hmm.
whichever domain you pick, and we are enhancing at the end of the day. That is how I see us. But
Mm-hmm.
in these, paths and practices, we do make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is fine as long as those mistakes don't really, impact us severely. But the way it goes is, we are now evolving in terms of, let's say, from that technological standpoint and other standpoints, similar standpoints. We are
Mm-hmm.
evolving very fast, as compared to what we have been doing in past, before industrial era, and the other eras before that, the kings and queens eras. Now the point is this: the evolution, the growth of us is, the growth of civilization is so much.
Mm-hmm.
I have this aspect. If, let's say, what if we become so intelligent, we build something which is not something to be trifled with. We definitely will learn from our feedback that we receive, but let's say if we make a mistake which is not reversible, then we
Mm-hmm.
have made a big, um, big mistake, something from which you can't go back. It even
Mm-hmm.
might imply that civilization is no longer there. So there's this
Mm-hmm.
theorem which has been mentioned by some guy, I don't know exactly who, but
Mm-hmm.
what he said was, the more smart we become, the
Mm-hmm.
the sooner the nearer we are to our, for any intelligent species, the more smart they become, the nearer we are to our, extinction, because we will eventually make a mistake which will,
I mean, it's a pretty deep thing to go into, and my answer is that if, well, such a day comes, then guess I'll just die. I mean, fuck it. What else there is to it?
you can't do anything. That's true.
This is pretty much like that kind of situation wherein social media, but at least on Facebook, in the dying days of Facebook, it used to happen. People used to post a picture in which you have a lion out there, and you have five snakes in there, and there is a big cliff on the other side, and there's thunder coming down, and there is also a boulder coming down out there. And the guy used to write, "What would you do in such a situation?" Yeah, I guess I'll just die. Okay, fine, I get it. So if we are
Right.
around, if we arrive at in this kind of a situation out there, then all right, so long. Happy to be with you guys. Bye bye.
Yeah, that's one way to say. Yeah, definitely, I understand, and that is how it has to be, I believe. You don't have any other choice, so as to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming back to our discussion, you were saying something.
No, not
Yeah.
in particular. No.
Yeah. So coming back to our discussion, so this neural network CNN thing, AlexNet, it really made an impression in the AI community, that this way of training and, using, building the models, smart
Mhm.
models, ML models, really works. And that is when the whole hype took in. And one of the reason why this really happened and was possible, because the computation power now was far more
It
better than
was
what it
available.
was. Yeah, in earlier
It was
cases
available.
when this was provided. So I mean, so the point is this, and from that moment onwards, neural networks did really took a very big, catch, and it has been
Yes.
evolving so far. Right now we have LLMs, chat GPTs, Gemini models coming up, who can do
Hmm.
really good job in providing you answers if you have a question,
Right.
so as to
They
say.
can.
Now, with all this, history and evolution that we are seeing on ML and neural networks in general. What is your belief? How will it shape the coming industry in the coming time?
First off, AI will be
In-
added to.
yeah,
Could you please repeat your question? I mean, the,
just
the very last part, the last part.
yeah, I just said that in both sides, like how would it, let's say if you are when you're mentioning about the impacts in societies and the tech stack in general as well, in good ways and bad ways, how will it both sides, because
Right.
coin has two
First off,
sides.
so first off, AI is not going to take your job. Calm down. That's the first thing. Really. I have been asked this question by a bunch of people who are in their second year college, third year college, first year college, people who are in class 10th and they want to go into programming and they're worried that what's the point? AI will either way make all the apps.
Mm-hmm.
No. AI will not take your job. The guy who knows how to use AI effectively will take your job. So
Mm-hmm.
keep that in mind.
True.
Next, after this, anything and everything where AI should be used and should not be used, and there is no point in using AI, will be integrated there. It has already
Mm-hmm.
begun.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have AI powered emails, AI powered chats, AI powered recommenders. I mean, the recommenders is a legit use case. At some place of time, I don't know where I actually looked at AI powered toaster, for God's sake. So IoT toasters were not good enough. Now we have AI powered toasters. Samsung is bringing AI in their refrigerators for some reason. Now I don't know what kind of psychopath you have to be to speak to your goddamn fridge. Why would you want to do that? But to each their own devices. Point being, AI will be added to anything and everything. That's first. Then there is going to be a second period where AI is not going to be anything out of ordinary anymore. The novelty will wear off. And as the novelty will wear off, that would be the demise of chatbots, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Once the novelty wears off, all right, fine enough. So remember when WhatsApp first came, or you could say instant messenger when first came, particularly we Indians who
Mm-hmm.
used to go for SMS packs, we were like, what did you say? Unlimited messages.
Correct.
And people really went to town with it. Everybody is texting all the fucking time. I was
Mm-hmm.
in college, and I know, like, I was part of that time period. Facebook Messenger, this and that. Everybody's texting all the period, all the times. At this point of time, everybody's making AI all the time. Everybody is chatting with chatbots all the period of time. My prediction is in upcoming max 2 to 3 years, or might much faster than that, this novelty will wear off. People will actually start to expect, you could say, small good to have things powered by AI, with or without powered by AI, by default into their systems. And that
Mm-hmm.
would be, you would say, that would be the standardization of the thing, when the technology is not exciting anymore, when it is the boring, stable technology, and it is
Mm-hmm.
there in working
Mm-hmm.
in there. That's pretty much it. That's how I see it.
Agree with the part that chatbots will become not so excited stuff, because
Mhm.
that will become, for firstly it will become very normal to have chatbots. Initially it
Yes.
was not, but now it will, after a duration of time, it will become normal. Secondly, whatever functionality chatbot has right now to people,
Mhm.
all those functionality will be absorbed by the absorbed by all the industries which are there possibly.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
So I believe the utility of chatbots in general will, at least these chatbots like ChatGPT and Gemini, will
Mhm.
severely reduce. So they won't really be the thing of the coming time. What will
Mhm.
rather be is that whatever things we have, they will become more smart and intelligent. IoT devices and normal computers and stuff.
Right.
I'm not sure if you have heard about this part or not, but there are some people who are working on AI based operating system. That will be interesting to see as well. So, yeah, a lot
AI-based
of.
operating system. Wow. I believe the guy who coined this term doesn't know anything to begin with technical, either about OS or about AI.
It's more about they representing the interface, I believe. They want to bring an interface where you seriously communicate to AIs on everything that
I
you
mean, I
do.
can understand touch-based interface, or I could understand terminal-centric interface. I could also understand GUI. But I don't understand X-based OS. Man, OS is not. It cannot be based on anything or whatsoever. It has one job: to power your drivers, to power your hardware. What do you
That's
mean by basing that thing onto something?
that's true. That's true. Just a convention to inform people how things work. But yeah, I agree on the part. Um, Going on ahead, I also believe that AI will be normal, but it will, in the meantime, it will become normal. It will impact a lot of society, so lot of industries, from like industries like entertainment industry to productivity based industries, or the industries that we can think of. Ultimately, anything which has some sort of connection with the electronics and computer and stuff, which is almost present everywhere.
Mhm.
Yeah. So one specific domain that I am sort of interested in knowing how it will be impacted in the coming time, especially via AI, is
Mhm.
the gaming industry, because there have been even in past attempts to bring in some sort of intelligence in the games in past. What is your opinion? How will the AI impact the gaming industry, and
Most
how?
certainly, people are going to use it in all aspects of video games,
Mhm,
in environment development, in content generation. I mean, procedural content generation frameworks are already out there being used in video games. However,
mhm.
the you could say a good use of AI in video games would be in the spaces where you are eliminating the grunt work.
Okay.
But companies being
Example.
companies, and particularly Ubisoft and EA being Ubisoft and EA, the larger people out there, they are going to use and abuse this thing more or less to replace all of the actual effort in making a game out there.
Mhm,
So, I mean, there will be players who would try to do the cash grab thing where use AI to make everything and the game will suck and people will complain and nothing's good's gonna come out of it. Let's talk
mhm.
about the positive use cases in this one.
Right.
Well, industry is already using AI in a lot of areas actually. We have artificial intelligence related tools which can present you with this 10 to 12 variations of a particular level design, or 10 to 12 variations of a particular you could say environment experience, how the level should feel and look, and you can choose one of them and you could then further custom fine tune and revise it out there.
Mhm,
We have AI based tools which are really good at generating, you could say, realistic human voices. So people use them a lot before finalizing a particular story or a particular, I would say, cutscenes out there. Because during the during the development of a particular game, your story or even your dialogues in particular are going to change at many times. Now, good thing about games is that cutscenes are actually created completely separate from the gameplay. So
right.
this gives people a lot of leeway by using some kind of AI tools to kind of have some kind of placeholder dialogue out there and see what works, what does not work. And when they finalize the whole thing at that point of time, they bring in the real talent, which is the voice actors out there to really,
Mhm,
make it production ready out there. So no, it's not the case that how it will be used. It is being used as of now.
mhm,
And a lot, like almost every aspect of game development out there, AI-based tools are pretty fucking useful actually. Particularly in art generation area, a lot of artists use tools like Midjourney or something to create inspiration pieces. I can
mhm.
let me let me show you one more thing.
Sure, please.
So talking about a general creative process, actually, this is how it goes. This is how it starts, more or less. Okay. Uh, let me open up this one, the White Castle. So you start with something like this, an inspiration board in here. And on this inspiration board, you put some images which, suppose you have an idea. For instance, I have this particular idea in my mind that I want to make a video game level or at least some kind of storytelling level where there's a white marble building actually,
Right.
and scene is in the night, something along the lines of this.
Mhm,
Imagine yourself. Imagine that you are standing here, going from here to here, and then you enter there, or from the different angle, this building could look also like this. So you could see
Mhm.
the common aesthetics in here. There are two different images, but they have very common aesthetic in here. You have
Mhm.
another depiction of the similar thing in here. So this inspirational stuff is really, really actually very, very helpful when you are trying to develop a concept for something in there. So here I have
Okay.
created this board. I call it the White Castle, and so that's there. So the time is night. There's water. There's stuff. There is some fire as well. Maybe may not be. The castle is made up of pure marble out there and white. You're going,
Mhm.
and then you have some
Okay.
related stuff in here. So you might have noticed one thing. This is not AI generated. This is not AI generated. This is
Okay.
also not AI generated. This, on the other hand, is AI generated. So
Okay.
you are able to see the utility right now in here.
Mhm.
Tools like Midjourney and other things, the kind of utility they provide. Suppose you are trying to get an inspiration for creating a level where you have groves of trees and a little bit of stream and some path in there. So yeah, AI can do a very, very good job at showing you certain examples from which you can draw off. All of these images are AI generated, apart from this one.
Mhm.
These one are all AI generated actually. This is a real artist.
Right.
Yeah, there are many use cases. In fact, AI is being used very, very extensively.
The images that are being generated right now via AI models are really very kind of artistic, creative. So they do a good job when it comes to building up images, high quality images, which are very creative and provides some staggering results right now, which you have yourself shown, and which is the reality in a way, which for a normal designer will take a lot of time.
Mhm.
That is true, and that is something certainly which is gonna enhance the overall production quality of video games, or any other stuff which requires.
Yogesh, I would like to issue, you could say, or highlight a nuance
Please,
in here.
please.
Images generated by AI, yes, they are of very high quality.
Mhm.
However, without any exception, like with zero exceptions, these images are imitating or copying some real world artist style
That's true.
every
With some
single
random.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah. So AI generated images, at least for foreseeable future, will never be used directly in a video game.
that is true. Agree on the part.
So what's going to happen that artists who are creating a 3D realm out there, like you are not that big into games, but let me okay, allow me to kind of start the process.
Please.
So games happen to exist on a very unique, you could say, blending point of art and
Mhm.
technology.
Right.
A good game, really good game, has to be artistically rich, has to be artistically rich in terms of visual arts, in terms of auditory or audible arts, music, and all of those things. It also needs to function really good on the writing side of things, on the story side of things. A bunch of creative artistic endeavors, they come together. And finally, the programming becomes so sophisticated in this thing that you could argue it's state of art, actually,
Right. Hmm.
in video games. Now, all of the artists who are creating anything 3D or even posters, let's say, for these video games, before creating anything 3D, it helps a lot. And it actually is pretty much mandatory once you get into the area of 3D content creation. Okay, I
Hmm.
hate that word. Why did I say that? 3D asset creation, actually.
Okay.
So you need something to inspire. For example, if you want to create the Taj Mahal in your video game, you need to model it in 3D. And in order to model it into 3D, you need to have pictures of Taj Mahal to
Right.
do it right. In a similar manner, if you are modeling a futuristic factory which is set up on Moon or maybe on Mars, yeah, you need some images for that. So in
Hmm.
past, what used to happen, the same artists who are doing 3D also happen to be good at painting or sketching at least. These people drew their own concept art.
True.
As the demand for specialization grew, we have dedicated like painters, digital painters out there who instead of oil on canvas, they paint in something like Photoshop or Krita or maybe in MS Paint actually, and they come up with these concept arts. It's a very a legitimate process. While you in the art direction pipeline of any video game, you have something
Right.
called concept artists. So concept
Mhm.
artists use their own imagination, which they consult with game director as well as writer actually to come up with something, and then that is provided in addition to the inputs from again the game director as well as the writer to the 3D artist, and that's how it is created out there. Now a lot of companies, what they are going to do in future, and a lot of them already doing this today,
Mhm.
concept artist starts with a rough sketch with what they themselves have created, and then the artist feeds this thing into the AI and it asks AI to color it or maybe generate variations of it. And then the creative team is going to sit together and then they're going to take a decision. Okay, this looks kind of good. Then the concept artist is going to take that, the one which looks kind of good, and then the artist is going to produce something which would be considered as the, yeah, this actually is the final concept. And then it
Right.
goes into the 3D pipeline.
Mhm.
This is how generally the process goes actually.
Right.
When it comes to quote unquote content, the cheap stuff, the sludge of the internet, as I would say, yeah, AI
Right.
rules supreme in there, and very soon you will see large and small companies cutting corners and just flat out using AI generated things out there in their marketing thing. And I mean, companies are already doing it.
Right.
We all know there are thousands of startups out there who use AI to write your social media posts, to generate images for your social media marketing strategy and campaign, and all of those things.
Mhm. Okay. So, firstly, thanks for correcting me. I think what I was conveying was not really to the accurate point that I really wanted to convey, but what you say makes sense. But I have a different. I asked this question to you, right? How do you see AI impacting the overall society and the technology that we are, the technological domain that we are working on, right? So
Mhm.
I have this very generalized picture of how it will impact us. And let me take let me give this explanation within a sort of analogy, so as to say. So initially, when
Sure.
we as a programmer used to write code, we used to use Notepad plus plus. Even before that, we used to use Vim like tools, purely
Mhm.
keyboards, and we had an interface. Now
Hey,
we
I
use
use
IDE.
Vim today. I don't use ID. Come on, don't say that. I'm a Vim power user, man.
I
Come on.
understand. I understand what you mean to say, and I'll, also, I will probably be able to either I will be able to learn something from you, or I'll be able to, kind of take your opinion into matter, and will say that, see, this also works fit in what I want to say. But let me say. So we right now, or at least majority of people, are now kind of using IDs, and the main perspective that I want to mention here is the amount of work and time it used to take to write a code in past times, and now the amount of time it takes to build something in past, and now it is way shorter than in past. So now we can work on more complicated things because we have frameworks built, or we have some ID support which helps us in XYZ manner. The
Right,
point that I
right.
want to mention is that the process has been becoming a bit intelligent when it is assisting us to maybe write a code, or it can be like static analyzer and XYZ stuff. So the point is that we have been able to increase our productivity with the enhancement that we have been able to bring into the software that we have been using. Even when I talk about Vim and other softwares which are present, those software also have been benefited with the advancement in the frameworks, especially, at least like I mentioned, analyzer and stuffs. So that really helps out in many ways. The way I see AI, improve, building upon it is that it will further enhance the productivity of an individual who is working on a project. So let's say if
Mhm.
there was something which was not possible in past because either it requires a lot of iterations and we just don't have time, or
Mhm.
it is way harder to build something very big. Now it won't be the case because, again, the point is that AI will assist you, like in the example of an artist, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
maybe earlier the artist, there are certain tasks which are still laborious, which artists
Mm-hmm.
might, let's say, if in case AI takes over, it will really
Mm-hmm.
help artists to increase the iteration speed and come up with something which he really wants to be out there, or
Mm-hmm.
go very wild as such, even if he wants or she wants.
Mm-hmm.
The point is
Mm-hmm.
this: the way I see this enablement in long run, whatever be the drops and ups in the whole journey, is that it will ultimately enhance the productivity of an of us, or other people in the domain, on the respective domain, and they will be
Mm-hmm.
able to do things more complicated, which were initially in past not so much comprehensible to them that they can do. So
Mm-hmm.
that is where I kind of was wanted to mention that one of the thing that AI will still, even though there will be a human holding or final um, decision making, the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it will be able to take some of the generalized task from the people, and it probably will happen that that generalized task will be also, so in this current time we have something what we call it as generalized task, right? In future the
Mm-hmm.
generalized task might be something, the definition of it might be something very different than what we have it
Right.
right. But the whole
The
story is
definition definitely will start to cover more and more complex or maybe abstract systems, actually. Absolutely. You're right
right.
there.
So the productivity will in general will go very high as relatively to the past, and that is how I see it will impact to the at least the industrial part of it. So we will be able to build more.
Agreed on that part, mostly, yes.
Right.
We have an agreement on that part. I would like to add one point in here.
Yeah.
As it has been with the case with all sorts of code generators, there have been code generators even way before AI. I started to work as a freelancer developer in my college time as well, where Code Igniter was all the rage, PHP 4's era I'm talking about. Then I upgraded to Laravel, then Python, then yeah, you have to come to Java eventually if you're on server side.
Right.
From there, I went back to Python, a whole lot of back and forth in here. And I can tell you, at least in PHP world, like forget PHP world, we already have had very, very successful code generators out there already. WordPress is one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes, like when you install a couple of plugins, you set up some configurations real quick, and it's going to write heaps and heaps of all complicated spaghetti PHP code out there. It's going to give you your website and number of functionalities out there. So things, I mean, in this area, when we are going to have much more sophisticated code generator tools out there, pretty much like Copilot from GitHub and ChatGPT to a larger extent out there, there are all of the plus sides which you mentioned, with
Mm-hmm.
a pretty big downside as well. It allows people to be lazy. And yeah, it's kind of a good thing. It allows you to be lazy in the sense that a person like you might take being lazy in a direction that, okay, then I can focus on things which truly need my attention. Because
Right.
let's say I want, you want to create, let's say, some kind of a pager or some kind of a list out there. So Android has a very complicated way of list rendering, actually, if
That's true.
you are into UI development.
Right.
So what is the name of that thing? I forgot. It is some
uh,
recycler view. My God, that thing. So you have
right.
recycler view, and you need to write a bunch of adapters and this and that. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about AI generates this thing for you? Then you can actually focus on the things which actually matter, like how do you tweak the content of the feed? How do you tweak the prioritization of what has to be shown at what point of time in your application? You can put your mind there. But to a lot of people, this actually means that now I get to be lazy. I don't have to write this anymore. So yeah, AI is writing it. Why do I need to learn it? And this approach is going to take you so far that when you have to do something complicated with this particular use case, you bust. And I've already started to see a whole bunch of people with this kind of attitude, since I have to interview regularly in my company,
Right.
particularly for front end positions,
Right.
beginner front end positions, because this is the area which was captured by AI first, actually.
Yeah. I have few
So
things to
yeah,
say here. So if whenever you finish, I'll say that part.
I have finished. Please go on, man.
So on to this second, uh, second category of people that you brought on. Okay,
Uh-huh.
my say will be that they'll adapt. I'll tell you why. Because you yourself mentioned, right, that AI won't take your jobs. The people who will use AI will take a job, right? So
The people who
if you
will use AI effectively will take
effectively will
jobs.
take your job, right? So if you won't really do something productive, and you will do the lazy stuff, it won't suffice in that standard of time. You'll have to do
Mm-hmm.
more than what you were thinking that I'll be fine with doing what I have right now. So the
Mm-hmm.
whole point is that you will have to adapt and focus on the things that maybe you were not thinking to initially work upon, but now you will have to
Mm-hmm.
work, even if, let's say, you don't have the, maybe the energy to work upon, because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it is about value creation, right? If
Mm-hmm.
someone is doing it, you will have to be on the same par. Otherwise, are not you won't get that place for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You got the point that I mean to say. What I mean to say is that you will have to effectively increase your productivity in certain ways, which will ultimately enable the organization and positive way forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since AI is making your things easy, does not implies that you can take bed rest and don't do anything. Because if people
Right.
will see you, someone will replace you. That's how
Correct.
things work. So like you mentioned, yeah, the people who will use AI will effectively take a job. So considering this part, there won't be lazy people or they won't be in jobs. So so yeah,
I mean,
that's
man, this is not that easy because one phenomenon which we are already seeing of
Mhm.
proliferation of AI use is, pardon my language, shitification of internet.
Okay.
I have been to I have been an avid user of different forums. Like Reddit became popular way after, and even today there are dedicated forums for anything and everything which you want to do out there. And the maintainers of these forums, they work tirelessly very hard, pretty much like mods of Reddit. They
Okay.
keep the whole thing alive. Moderation is required. When
Hmm.
people have ability to generate heaps and heaps of garbage upon garbage ad infinitum, ad nauseum out there, what's going to happen is that to separate gems from the dirt is going to become really difficult. And this
Okay.
thing is being realized in real time as we use the internet. And my god, this thing is going, I have started to feel this thing, as I said, in my due interview processes actually. So
Okay.
yes, the productivity argument is there, no one is denying that, that is true. However, the problem I believe is with humans. You remember in on this very stream some time ago, I mentioned the concept of wisdom. We first have the fire, then we are burnt with it, and then we have the wisdom. So you
That's
could
true.
say another example of that thing, that quote unquote muddying of the waters, shitification of the ecosystems, be it virtual or be it interviews or be it discourse over the internet. Well, it's going to be mind blowing actually before it settles down and things. We have effective tools to manage these things against.
Okay. That seems an valid point.
I mean, I'll tell you this: check an elderly person's phone.
Hmm.
What you will see is endless stream of shit. Most of it AI generated out there,
Okay.
and these
Mhm.
people, they do not have the kind of internet literacy we people have. People who are anybody who is 50 plus at this point of time, take a look at their phones, take a look at their WhatsApp, take a look at their YouTube streams, and you will see garbage, low quality, you could say, cash grab, quote unquote, content flowing in endless droves, and these people just gluing to it. And the other day, my maternal uncle, my mama was showing me, look what kind of snake scientists have found. I have never found you interested in this kind of thing. What is a snake? It was clearly a bloody AI generated image with a Sheshnag style, seven heads of cobra out there. I was like, come on,
Okay.
this is not real. And the guy said, well, look at this real photo. This is not edited. Well, this is AI generated. This is not real. So The shitification will happen first.
Mm, valid point. Let's see. But that's a valid point. I can understand. I believe the reason is like
The
in the
reason is we are humans, man. That's the reason. People do crazy things.
right. Okay. Fair enough. Moving on ahead, we are kind of sparse on time. So there's
Hmm.
one question that I want you to specifically address, and I think you are
Hmm.
the right guy to address this question. And then anything that you want to add on for the viewers, please.
Hmm.
My question is that since we were not able to talk that much about gaming in general,
Hmm.
but yeah, still, but one of the questions that I can extract from the discussion that I suppose that I'll have with you is that if you can, share a roadmap to anyone who is kind of a game enthusiast and he wants, who is a software developer for sure, and who wants to,
Hmm.
kind of switch to game development field, or just want to, for fun purposes or project purposes, personal purposes, want to deep dive into the gaming industry. How can they do it? What should be, according to you, the roadmap, as you
Okay.
see?
I'll start this thing from a word of advice actually, because over the period of time, I have made some really good friends actually.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they're like virtual friends. I do not know anyone in real life. Okay, I know two people in real life who work in games industries actually.
Okay.
So,
Nice.
okay, caveat one, I'm going to frame this question. I'm going to frame my answer from the perspective of game development market in India,
Okay.
our country. There's no
Mm-hmm.
point in talking about EA or Ubisoft or Rocksteady, because none of those companies have any meaningful development in India. So either way, you will be joining something like Moonfrog Studios or something like Desi Games. Yeah, by the way, there's a company called Desi Games out there. And here's the thing about game development in India. There is no quality game development in India. It does not exist. All of the
Mm-hmm.
game development companies in India, they are in the business of making Android games. These Android games happen to be cheap clones of either Ludo King or some kind of fairy tale games out there.
Okay.
Keeping that thing in mind, as again making an assumption that you are interested in working in real game industry. If you already have a decent job in software industry out there, do not switch to game development industry. Just don't. It's one of the worst industries as a developer, as an artist, where you can work from.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy work hours, really crazy work hours, and on par pay in international circles. So this advice really applies to the people who happen to have a good position in their current jobs actually. Crazy
Okay.
work hours, difficult, very difficult job out there. The nature of game development is difficult. However, the pay is pretty much more or less in the same ballpark as a Java dev, more or less out there.
Okay.
That's the harsh reality. All right, fine. You want to do this thing for the sake of learning. You want to learn this thing, and maybe at some point of time you want to start your own game thing out there. From that perspective, I can actually have some insights, because that is my personal plan in the long run. I do not want to write software as a service. I do not want to write a fucking app or a fucking website or Google Cloud or AWS for the rest of my life. I'm good at it, but in no means I am not passionate about this thing. And if you think that you are passionate about cloud, with due respect, please reevaluate your life choices.
Okay.
Now, I know that I have offended some people out there, but hey, that's my take on it. Now, coming to the actual question with these caveats out there.
Right.
You want to learn game development? Well, I myself have been doing learning game development for close to a year now, as of now past. So I can actually put in my 2 cents. If you are a developer out there, the first thing which you should do actually, even before touching any kind of game engine, be it Unreal or Unity or whatever, pick up 3JS. Three.js. 3JS is a JavaScript framework which runs completely in your browser. You would not need NVIDIA. If you have, it's great. If you have AMD graphic card, it's great. If you don't have any of that, no problems, it will work. So the barrier of entry in terms of hardware goes, it just goes away when you work with the browser out there. All modern browsers with the integrated graphic cards with Intel graphics processor, generally in your laptop or your desktop, they're sufficient for this thing. But if you are going for something like Unity or Unreal Engine, yeah, in order to do anything meaningful out there, you would be needing a pretty beefy graphic card actually. Now,
Okay.
keeping that thing in mind, learn the basics first. And I believe this advice goes for anything you ever want to do in your life. What are the basics when it comes to game development? Well, here's the thing. Basic number one is event driven program. If you're not very good at it, get some basics going. Asynchronous programming, multi-threaded programming. Okay. After that, pick a course on Udemy. Keep it small. Keep either do with 3J. So this is once you have done your initial understanding of graphics, of shaders, of inputs and outputs and all of those things, and game loop and the game world and game scene. You've done your basics in 3JS. Pick a game engine which is easier to work. I would recommend Godot. There's a game engine called Godot, Godot. That's how they pronounce it. Go to godot.org, download it, pick a Udemy course for Godot, and really, really make a Flappy Bird clone. It doesn't get more basic than that, and you're going to learn quite a lot about the systems in there. Over the period of time, increase your skill set and do not attempt to get into 3D game development on your day one. Spend some time writing core game logics out there. A card game would be a very good example. Try making some card game, try making some Pokemon card games, or try making some Duel Masters card game, or try making after Flappy Bird. You can actually think about making, how about a Mario clone, how about a Contra clone, how about a Ludo clone. Like even before Flappy Bird, you could go ahead with how about a board game. Once you have rinse repeated multiple times on this area, then you would be having your taste developed for this thing. And by its very nature, if you are interested into video game development, then I'm sure you are also interested into playing video games, because if you don't like playing video games, I don't see why you would ever be interested in video game development.
Makes sense.
So once you have done your fair share on the 2D versions of this thing, then starts the challenging part. Remember from memory or recall or boot up your favorite game and look at the level, a particular stage which you really liked. For me, one such example happens to be the initial areas of a video game called Dark Souls by From Software. Recreate it as good as you can. By the time you arrive there, you would have figured something out actually, where you want to go next from there. Because the fundamental aspects of graphics development, game logic parsing, how to move enemy players, we call it AI in game development, although there is no such thing as AI there. This is some clever logic going on out there. Maybe you like NFS a lot, then hey, how about making a 2D car racer like Road Rash or something like that out there? So by the time you are out to the 3D part, you're already will be, carving out a niche for your learning, and you would be having a pretty good idea what to do next from
there. Right.
That's what I would recommend. That's how I got started in there, and at this point of time, I'm working on something in here, and pretty soon, most probably in 2 or 3 months, I should be having something which I would actually put out on itch.io or on Steam for free download, where you guys can download it. It will be a horror exploration thing, actually.
Definitely. Best of luck for the game development and publishing it. I'm pretty sure the viewers will also.
It's a very far away. Like at some point of time, like I would like to make my own startup or something. So I have this unreasonable dream of making the first AAA game studio in this country. So that's it.